Picture this: millions of homeowners waking up to find their dream investment bleeding value faster than 2008 ever dared. Incomes can't keep pace. Mortgage rates choke buyers, and insurance premiums skyrocket into the stratosphere. Families are crushed under $4,000 monthly payments, investors are dumping houses by the dozens, and foreclosure signs are spreading like wildfire. What we're witnessing isn't a soft landing. It's a financial guillotine aimed squarely at America's most overinflated markets. From Florida's storm-ravaged coast to Silicon Valley's tech graveyards, the cracks aren't forming, they're exploding. Welcome to the countdown of 10 U.S. cities where the crash will be worse than 2008. Number 10. Riverside, California. Riverside is ground zero for a brewing housing nightmare. During the pandemic surge, the median home price here skyrocketed past $585,000, even though the median household income sits around $82,000, a gap that forces buyers into debt levels far worse than 2008. At today's 7% mortgage rates, a typical monthly payment on that median home runs nearly $3,800, which is over 55% of the average family's gross income, far beyond affordability limits. Back in 2008, prices collapsed after exotic loans unraveled. Now it's the iron weight of high interest costs, inflated valuations, and rising living expenses. Riverside's market is also drowning in supply. Active listings are up by nearly 65% year over year, and builders in Menifee and Moreno Valley keep pumping out new subdivisions that no one can realistically afford. Price cuts have already hit 30% of listings, with some sellers slashing $50,000 to $100,000 just to lure cautious buyers. Investors who once piled into single-family rentals here are retreating because rents are flattening at around $2,400 per month, not enough to cover soaring mortgages, property taxes, and insurance. That leaves a glut of investor-owned homes sitting unsold, each price reduction pulling neighborhood comps lower. The cracks are spreading. Foreclosure filings in Riverside County jumped 38% from last year, and with adjustable-rate mortgages resetting higher, more pain is ahead. Home equity that looked untouchable in 2021 is evaporating fast. Many buyers who put little down are now staring at negative equity. Combine that with soaring costs for gas, utilities, and insurance in California, and households are suffocating. In 2008, Riverside's collapse was devastating, but this time, the mix of crushing monthly payments, oversupply, and investors dumping inventory could drive a price correction that doesn't just rival the last crash, it could obliterate it. Number 9. Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta was once the poster child of affordable Southern living, but those days are long gone, and what's coming looks darker than 2008. The median home price across the metro now hovers near $420,000, while median household income is barely $77,000. At current 7% mortgage rates, the monthly payment shoots to $2,900, a cost burden that swallows almost 45% of local wages, far above what buyers can realistically handle. Back in 2008, prices plunged when reckless lending collapsed. This time, it's the sheer mismatch between incomes and inflated values, combined with record-breaking investor speculation, that threatens to pull Atlanta under. Investors control nearly 30% of single-family homes in some Atlanta suburbs, making the market dangerously fragile. When rents flatten around $2,100 per month and insurance bills surge past $2,500 annually, those corporate landlords panic and dump properties. That oversupply creates chain reaction price cuts. Already, over 28% of listings are slashing prices by $40,000 to $60,000 to tempt buyers who no longer qualify for bloated mortgages. Inventory is climbing fast, with active listings up 55% year over year, a red flag eerily similar to pre-crash conditions. Foreclosure activity is ticking up too, with filings in Fulton and DeKalb counties rising nearly 30% compared to last year. Adjustable-rate loans that reset higher are hitting working-class homeowners hardest, and once negative equity spreads, the fire sale begins. Add to that Atlanta's slowing job growth in logistics and construction, and the booming metro narrative quickly unravels. During 2008, Atlanta saw double-digit declines, but recovery came relatively fast. This time, with investors over-leveraged, incomes stagnant, and costs for everything from groceries to utilities climbing, the foundation looks weaker. If just a fraction of those investor-owned homes flood the market in the next 12 months, Atlanta's drop could be steeper, sharper, and even more brutal than the last crash. Number 8. Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix was one of the epicenters of the 2008 housing collapse, and history is setting the stage for an even nastier rerun. The median home price sits around $470,000, yet local median income is only $78,000, forcing families into crushing debt just to buy modest tract homes. With today's 7% mortgage rates, a typical monthly payment soars to $3,200, nearly 50% of household earnings, a recipe for widespread defaults. In 2008, speculative buyers fueled the crash. Now it's a mix of inflated valuations, construction oversupply, and climate-driven insurance spikes that could make Phoenix's fall worse. Builders blanketed Maricopa County with new developments, and now inventory is piling up. Active listings surged more than 70% in a year, with nearly 35% of sellers cutting prices, some by $100,000 or more. Investors who once flocked here are fleeing as rents stall at around $2,000 per month, nowhere near enough to cover mortgages, rising property taxes, and insurance that can exceed $3,500 annually in heat-prone areas. Vacancy rates are inching higher, especially in outer suburbs where sprawling subdivisions sit half-empty, echoing the ghost town vibes of 2009. Foreclosures are already climbing, up 40% year-over-year, with defaults spreading fastest among buyers who purchased at peak 2021 prices. Many of those households are sliding into negative equity, trapping them in homes they can't sell without absorbing six-figure losses. Combine that with water shortages, rising utility bills, and insurance firms pulling out of flood and fire risk zones, and Phoenix's cost of ownership is spiraling out of control. In 2008, Phoenix lost nearly half its home value before stabilizing. But the difference this time is debt service. Monthly payments are now nearly double what they were then. That means the potential correction won't just mirror 2008. It could slice even deeper, leaving thousands stranded in homes worth far less than their crushing loans. Number 7. Detroit, Michigan. Detroit's housing market is no stranger to collapse, but what's brewing now could cut deeper than the Great Recession's scars. The median home price is deceptively low at about $200,000, but the local median household income is a meager $39,000, meaning even cheap homes are wildly unaffordable when rates hover at 7%. A standard mortgage now demands nearly $1,400 per month, consuming over 40% of a family's income before taxes, insurance, and utilities. Unlike 2008, when subprime lending imploded, Detroit's threat lies in economic fragility, colliding with inflated values propped up by investors and speculative buyers. Investor ownership exploded in Detroit, with some neighborhoods seeing 40% of homes snapped up by outside landlords. As rents stagnate around $1,100 per month, these investors are exiting, dumping properties in bulk. Already, 33% of listings are showing price cuts, some as steep as $30,000 to $50,000, just to attract scarce buyers. Inventory has ballooned 60% year over year, signaling that demand is collapsing at the exact moment supply floods in. The city's economy is another time bomb. Auto industry layoffs ripple across the region, and when those paychecks vanish, so do mortgage payments. Foreclosure filings surged nearly 35% in Wayne County, and many homeowners who bought at post-pandemic peaks now face negative equity as comps slide. Add in Detroit's high property taxes, often exceeding 2.5% of assessed value, and ownership costs become unbearable even at low sticker prices. In 2008, Detroit was among the hardest hit, with entire blocks abandoned. But now, inflated investor portfolios, stagnant wages, and a fragile economy mean the next downturn could erase gains even faster. Instead of a slow bleed, Detroit risks a brutal freefall where affordability vanishes, equity evaporates and neighborhoods collapse under a wave of distressed sales worse than the last crash. Number 6. Tampa, Florida. Tampa's market has turned into a powder keg, and the numbers scream danger. The median home price exploded to nearly $430,000, yet the median household income lingers around $70,000. At today's 7% mortgage rates, the monthly bill on that home sits near $2,950, which eats up more than 50% of a family's gross income. That is unsustainable. Back in 2008, Tampa's collapse was triggered by reckless loans. Today, it's the toxic mix of inflated values, surging insurance premiums, and hurricane risk pushing ownership beyond reach. Florida's insurance crisis is front and center here. Annual premiums in the Tampa Bay area have rocketed past $6,000, and some waterfront homes are uninsurable altogether. Sellers who bought in 2021 at peak prices are now desperate. 30% of listings already show price cuts, with reductions as high as $70,000. Inventory has jumped 60% year over year, and builders continue flooding the suburbs of Pasco and Hillsborough counties with new construction, worsening the oversupply. Rents, meanwhile, have flattened around $2,100 per month, leaving investors cash flow negative. Foreclosure filings are climbing, up 42% in the past year, as adjustable-rate mortgages reset higher and insurance renewals shock homeowners. Negative equity is spreading among those who bought with minimal down payments, and with property taxes tied to inflated values, carrying costs are suffocating households. The parallels to 2008 are obvious, but the addition of climate-driven insurance chaos makes this downturn potentially worse. Tampa's growth narrative, sunshine, jobs, retirees, cannot paper over the math. Too many overpriced homes, too few buyers, and skyrocketing costs of ownership. This is a city primed for a brutal correction. Number 5. Oakland, California. Oakland's housing market has been stretched to the breaking point, and the collapse brewing now could make 2008 look tame. The median home price here is still an eye-watering $875,000, while the median household income hovers around $92,000. That's nearly 10 times income, a ratio considered financial suicide. At 7% mortgage rates, the monthly payment on the median home nears $5,700, consuming almost 75% of the average household income. That's not a market, it's a slow-motion implosion. The cracks are already visible. Active listings are up 50% year over year, and nearly 35% of sellers are cutting prices, with reductions averaging $100,000 to $150,000. Investor activity is collapsing, as rental yields simply don't justify the costs. Average rents in Oakland hover near $3,000, nowhere close to covering mortgages, insurance, and California's punishing property taxes. Add in the rising crime rate and the exodus of families to cheaper states like Texas and Nevada, and demand evaporates even faster. Foreclosure filings in Alameda County surged 28% this year, a sign that households stretched during the pandemic are beginning to crack. Tech layoffs across the Bay Area further erode buyer confidence, as shrinking incomes collide with towering housing costs. Unlike 2008, when toxic mortgages triggered defaults, today's threat is pure affordability collapse. The numbers don't pencil out for buyers, investors, or even long-time owners struggling with rising taxes and maintenance. Oakland's position is precarious. If the broader Bay Area downturn accelerates, Oakland will be hit hardest, as it lacks the prestige buffer of San Francisco but carries nearly the same inflated costs. The last crash gutted equity. This one could hollow out the entire market. Number 4. Cape Coral, Florida. Cape Coral was devastated in 2008, losing nearly 60% of its home value. But what's happening now may be even worse. The median home price shot to around $415,000, while median household income sits near $68,000. At today's 7% mortgage rates, the monthly cost on that home hits $2,850, which is more than 50% of income, and that's before Florida's crushing insurance premiums. Many homeowners now pay over $9,000 annually for coverage, if they can get it at all. Inventory in Cape Coral has exploded, up a staggering 85% year over year. Nearly 40% of active listings have already slashed prices, some by $100,000 to $120,000. Rents, once touted as strong, have stalled at around $2,000 per month, leaving investors bleeding red ink. Builders added thousands of new homes during the pandemic boom, and those subdivisions now sit half-empty, echoing the eerie silence of the 2008 crash. Foreclosures in Lee County jumped 45% in the past year, and homeowners who bought at peak valuations are already falling underwater. Negative equity is spreading like wildfire, trapping families who can't sell without losing tens of thousands. Combine this with the hurricane risk. Hurricane Ian alone caused $113 billion in damages, and you have buyers fleeing in droves. Property taxes on inflated valuations make the cost of ownership even worse, forcing fire sales that accelerate the downward spiral. In 2008, Cape Coral became the poster child of America's housing collapse. Today, with even higher insurance premiums, more speculative building, and households more financially fragile, the coming correction could strip away equity faster than last time. Cape Coral isn't just vulnerable, it's already in freefall, and the bottom may be much further down than anyone expects. Number 3. Las Vegas, Nevada. Las Vegas is the ultimate boom and bust city, and the signs point to another brutal collapse, one that could easily rival or even outpace 2008. The median home price in Vegas still hovers around $430,000, yet the median household income is barely $72,000. At 7% mortgage rates, that translates to monthly payments over $2,950, eating more than 50% of gross income. Back in 2008, Vegas lost nearly half its housing value. Now, with today's extreme affordability squeeze, oversupply, and investor pullback, the decline could cut even deeper. Inventory has surged. Active listings are up nearly 70% year over year, and more than 35% of sellers are already slashing prices, some by as much as $80,000 to $120,000. Investor ownership remains high, especially in condos and single-family rentals, but rents have flatlined at about $1,900 per month. Rising HOA fees, insurance premiums over $3,000 annually, and high property taxes make cash flow nearly impossible. So institutional investors are dumping homes en masse. That flood of inventory pushes comps lower and accelerates price cuts. Foreclosure activity has climbed 40% in Clark County, with defaults concentrated among buyers who stretched during the 2021 frenzy. Many are now sliding into negative equity, unable to refinance, and staring at losses they can't absorb. Unlike in 2008, today's crash risks are compounded by Vegas's economy. The tourism sector is softening under inflation, higher travel costs, and fewer international visitors. When casino jobs shrink, housing demand shrivels alongside them. Las Vegas has always been a high-stakes gamble. In 2008, it was a wipeout. But today, with higher borrowing costs, fragile employment, and speculative inventory rotting on the market, Vegas could endure a steeper, sharper collapse. The Strip may shine bright, but its neighborhoods are already dimming fast. Number 2. San Jose, California. San Jose is perched at the top of America's housing bubble, and if it bursts, the fall could be catastrophic. The median home price is an astronomical $1.4 million, while the median household income sits around $136,000. That's still more than a 10-to-1 price-to-income ratio, one of the highest in the nation. At 7% mortgage rates, a typical monthly payment exceeds $9,200, nearly 82% of the average household's income. It's unsustainable by every measure. Inventory has been climbing, with active listings up 45% year over year, and nearly 30% of homes are cutting prices, reductions often exceeding $200,000. Tech layoffs across Silicon Valley amplify the risk, slashing buyer demand and forcing some homeowners to sell quickly. Rental markets don't provide relief either. Average rents near $3,200 fall far short of covering mortgages, property taxes, and maintenance on million-dollar homes. That makes investors flee, leaving a glut of overpriced properties hanging on the market. Foreclosures in Santa Clara County are still relatively low but are rising, up 22% from last year, and with negative equity beginning to spread among pandemic peak buyers, more defaults are inevitable. The difference from 2008 is stark. Back then, bad loans triggered the collapse. Now it's sheer affordability failure. Even high-earning tech families can't comfortably carry today's payments, especially as equity portfolios shrink and stock options lose value. San Jose's housing market has always been extreme, but the cracks are widening. If layoffs continue and buyers retreat further, the domino effect could be swift. With values propped up by one of the weakest affordability ratios in America, San Jose is set up not for a correction, but for a plunge that could define the next housing crash. Number 1. Austin, Texas. Austin was the darling of the pandemic housing boom, but that boom has curdled into one of the ugliest busts in the nation. The median home price rocketed to nearly $600,000, while the median household income is about $86,000. At today's 7% mortgage rates, the monthly payment nears $4,100, which devours 57% of income. During 2008, Austin was largely spared the devastation seen elsewhere. This time, it's ground zero. Inventory has exploded, active listings are up a shocking 90% year over year, and nearly 40% of sellers have cut prices, with reductions averaging $75,000 to $150,000. New construction is drowning the market. Entire subdivisions around Pflugerville, Leander, and Georgetown are loaded with unsold homes. Builders are throwing out massive incentives, tens of thousands in discounts, rate buydowns, even free upgrades, just to clear stock. Investors who swarmed Austin during its tech boom are now unloading properties as rents flatten at $2,400 per month, nowhere near enough to cover carrying costs. Foreclosures are already climbing, up 48% in Travis County, and the pressure is mounting. Families who bought at 2021's insane peaks with thin down payments are underwater, trapped in homes worth less than their debt. Job cuts in Austin's tech sector add fuel to the fire, pulling buyers out of the pool just as inventory floods in. Property taxes, among the highest in the nation, often topping 2% of value, make the monthly burden unbearable. Austin's story is dramatic, from hottest city in America to one of its most fragile. In 2008, Austin stood tall while others crumbled. In 2025, the roles may reverse. The city that once symbolized limitless growth could soon symbolize the housing crash that proves worse, far worse, than 2008.